You are a very handsome student who enters the university. However, 3 years go by and you are still alone and without friends. But what you did not expect is that one day, a beautiful waifu appears and bluntly tells you, your lonely university days ends today, and wow people, I want that to happen to me. And remember, if you want to know the name of the anime, during the video it will appear below, so leave in the comments the minute it appears and I will send you a kiss. The anime begins in a beautiful spring, with a new phase of life for our young protagonist, Sakurai, a 19-year-old college boy who is about to start a new dream. There he meets an old classmate, Yuzaki, a waifu well short with tremendous personality. She greets the protagonist and they both remember the protagonist's old swimming days, so Yuzaki asks him if he plans to enroll in the swimming club again. However, unfortunately, this institute does not have a club dedicated to this sport, but that is not a problem for Sakurai. He already says that he will do many things this year, and that above all they will be much better than being in a club. So, as you can see, we have a very motivated protagonist here. But well, maybe not, since every day Yuzaki sees him alone, and being miserable on more than one occasion, like falling asleep on the bench, eating alone for lunch, playing video games during breaks, and at Christmas time, literally the man made a snowman by himself. Okay, now I'm sad. But hey, the waifu thinks that it will pass soon, but she was very wrong, since the following year was the same story, literally the same sad and miserable routine, and of course alone as usual. The waifu has seen enough, so she gets angry and decides to be his friend. So the next day of classes, of the new university year, the waifu appears with a new shirt, which the hell says a lot about her attributes. This is how the day goes by and we see that a class was cancelled for the main character. So he comes up with an improvised plan to spend the afternoon. The case is that out of nowhere we see that the waifu rams the main character, taking him out of circulation. There she asks the half-dying man if he is going to eat or what, and the boy, with a very serious and cold attitude, tells her that he has the afternoon off, and that he is going to clear his mind a little bit. So he says goodbye and leaves the waifu alone. Even though Yuzaki begins to follow him without fear of success, thus telling the protagonist that by chance she also has her afternoon off, so she decides to chase him everywhere. But obviously the protagonist doesn't want her around, however, so Yuzaki begins to say out loud that before he liked to go out with her, and that now he leaves her aside. Words that cause a great misunderstanding in everyone around him, and everyone thinks that the man is a womanizer and that he mistreats women. Yuzaki, seeing that everything is in her favor, laughs in a very evil way. Damn, this smile reminds me of Nagatoro waifu. And people, I don't think things are going to work out very well. Well, in the end, they go to the movies. There the waifu is surprised and at the same time makes fun of the fact that the man has planned to go to the movies by himself. But he doesn't care about this and tells her that she has to respect people's tastes. And well, despite all this, the waifu gives him a hard time, but since the protagonist is cool, he ends up inviting her to see the movie she wants. Later the waifu had to buy some headphones, so the man takes her to an electrical appliance store, where Yuzaki, instead of searching for headphones, she sits in a massage chair in front of him, up to here everything is chill. No? Well, things get cloudy when the waifu gives it maximum power and it makes very strange and horny noises, which make the protagonist feel very nervous. As anyone, I guess, the man manages to get out of there with the waifu. But before leaving, Yuzaki gets hooked on another exercise machine that makes her melons, well, bounce everywhere. A gem. Okay, continuing with the plot, they are going to play with a VR gaming system, where the protagonist ends up receiving a punch from the waifu, but in the end it was worth receiving it, since in his turn to play he entered in a kind of sea, so I was seeing fish and such. There out of nowhere a shark attacked him, but when he defended himself, well, he grabbed an epee from the waifu. And the funny thing is that she didn't get bothered. And beware, because we got a mischievous girl here. Well, after this, they go to play baseball, where the protagonist doesn't hit any damn ball. But when the waifu's turn comes, she had put herself in the perfect position to hit. However, she forgot to warm up and well, her back betrayed her. But don't worry, everything is going well. Well, at nightfall, the man takes her to have ramen for dinner, where by the way, while they were talking, this girl ate all the edible things on the table. Literally, this waifu is like me. The next day, the waifu tells him that they should repeat another outing, since it was a lot of fun spending time with him. At first the man takes it badly, and even tells her that he has a job, so he couldn't. But in the end, the lonely Sakurai thinks that despite the fact that this waifu is an unbearable girl, it is fun to be with her, so he hopes that the next one will be repeated soon. But what the protagonist does not know is that this decision would lead him to lots of teasing, but with succulence included. After finishing classes, we see the protagonist at work, a relaxing place, with good jazz music, and a great smell of coffee, which makes the clientele stay relaxed and calm in that great space. There we meet the owner. This old man thinks that the protagonist, despite having a terrifying face, is a very attentive and responsible person, who acts in a very pleasant way with all his clients, meaning the man is a pro as a worker. But his worst nightmare come to visit, and it is that by chance Yuzaki passed by the front, and when she took a look at that place, she spotted the main character. I don't think anything good is going to happen. Just when the owner of the store was saying that the protagonist never caused any problem, the waifu enters, the protagonist hits a tremendous scream, and with this the waifu begins making a tremendous fuss, which makes the protagonist get out of his hardworking mode, showing an attitude that the old man has never seen. There the old man, while he was half hidden, asks if they are dating, which the main character obviously refuses. The old man also thinks that Yuzaki is going to elementary school because of her height, which annoys the waifu, since she is going to the university, only that she is a year younger than the main character. And well, when the old man gets up, he feels that his instincts have already worsened due to his age, because the old man is always good at predicting things. But when he sees the huge melon she has, he realizes he was very wrong. Well, since Yuzaki is hungry, she tells Sakurai that he should treat her like a client. The main character, as she is a son of fruit, continues to treat her badly, since well, the waifu is somewhat irritating. The truth is that the protagonist enters into his role as a friendly salesman, but since Yuzaki is annoying, she ends up mocking his face, so the kid ends up taking her out of the premises. There the owner tells him that he can go now and to accompany Yuzaki to her house. So there they talk for a while, and the thing is that the waifu would like to go back to the cafe to have fun with the protagonist, but since he is grumpy, tells her not to go back ever again. Anyway, the next day, the protagonist was going to the university when he meets a cat in the street, and everyone looks at him like, what the hell? And well, of course Yuzaki appears, who sees the protagonist trying to play with the cat, and it is that the man is a cat and dog lover. He tries to caress him, but the feline does not allow himself. So the waifu approaches the kitten and teaches him how to treat him so that he allows himself to be petted, since she has several in her house, and in fact invites the protagonist to her house. But he doesn't quite accept. But, well, that's when the cat heard a sharp noise and runs away. There Yuzaki was already planning to go back to university, but when she sees the protagonist's depression, she decides to look for the cat, but ends up getting stuck in some bushes, in a quite indecent position. The protagonist tries to help her, but the position she is in is too much for him to handle and at the same time succulent. While the main character was helping the waifu, other girls who were passing by think that they are having sexy time in the bushes, so they panicked and runs away. But well, in the end he takes her out of there and the waifu pretends that nothing happened. And well, after this, the main character was in the cafeteria, chilling, when Yuzaki appeared, telling him that she was very sorry, but she already had plans to eat with some friends, so he would have to eat alone. But to everyone's surprise, the protagonist was going to eat with some friends, which leaves the waifu thinking like hell, since when do you have friends? Well, while they are eating, the waifu makes very strange signs, and in the end, they both end up wasting time chatting and don't eat anything. There, in the afternoon, the protagonist was enjoying the cafe where he works, relaxing a bit. But as the good things don't last, Yuzaki shows up again at the protagonist's work, this time sticking pretty close to the guy to ask for help with a report, because well, the man is a pro at writing. At first he does not agree to help her, basically because he was at work, but in the end he agrees, because the old man tells her that there is no more work to do, and well, he also wanted to observe them. This old man is a real gossip. There he helps her for a while. They talk about a couple of things when out of the blue the waifu asks him if she can go to his house to see how everything is, and also since his house is near the campus and he lives alone. Well, that would be great. Well, obviously, the protagonist tells her that it would be very strange for a girl to spend the night at a boy's house without being boyfriends. But in the end, the waifu just wanted to play video games all night, leaving the protagonist redder than a tomato. While the protagonist works, we meet another important character. This girl is called Ami and is a coworker of the protagonist, besides being the daughter of the owner of the place, and well, the girl is crazy about the protagonist because she sees him as a handsome guy, so much so that her mind starts to think dirty things about the guy. We also realize that the guy is popular with the girls, only that the guy does not realize the hints that the waifus do. Well, you have to admit that all men are dumb like this. At that moment, Yuzaki appears, where Ami notices that the way they treat each other is different. Yuzaki returns a video game that the protagonist lent him so that he could play it as soon as possible. There the waifu gives him her opinion where they both agree and there is a good feeling. But well, there the old man tells Ami that those two have a special way of treating each other, and that makes it fun to watch. There Ami interrogates a little to Yuzaki to see the tastes of the waifu, plus, she notices that the waifu has a great advantage with her personality. Although I don't know what Ami is complaining about, if she also has a good front. Well, the thing is that Yuzaki runs out of water, so decides to get some more, but the protagonist was in the way, so they both collide and end up all soaked. On another day, we see the waifu Yuzaki in the cafe, but our main character is missing. This is because the guy caught a cold and can't go to work. So, since Yuzaki wants to help him, the old man tells her where the main character lives. The waifu arrives ringing the doorbell like a maniac, and the main character in zombie mode opens the door for her, being surprised to see Yuzaki at his home, because he never told her where he lived. In that, unable to resist anymore, the man falls almost fainted, so he has no choice but to let the waifu in. And well, Yuzaki, seeing that the protagonist is really sick, decides to help him, so she goes shopping, also looks for medicine, and makes him a delicious dish that the protagonist cannot taste well, despite that he says that it is very tasty. And well, this does not end here, because after she takes care of him and washes the protagonist's back, the waifu stays playing video games to keep an eye on him. The day passes and the kid meets with Ami. There the man thanks her for having covered his shift at work, but well, it wasn't a problem for her, and in fact, she invites them to eat barbecue with Yuzaki. There they all get together to celebrate the recovery of the protagonist, where the old man takes advantage of the moment to talk to Sakurai, all this while Yuzaki goes to the bathroom. The old man asks the protagonist what happened that night when he was sick, and is that the old man wants the protagonist and Yuzaki to hang out together, since he feels that they are perfect for each other, in that the protagonist tells them to calm down a bit, where well he makes it clear that he is not interested in having a relationship, so in the end he makes it very clear that nothing happened between them. Yuzaki, upon returning and hearing that Sakurai calls Ami by her name, gets quite jealous, so the next day she calls the protagonist to talk, where out of nowhere she tries to hypnotize him so that the men call her by her name Hana. The fact is that Sakurai follows the role and end up calling her Hana, which makes Yuzaki quite happy, but the waifu begins to ask him for more things, which makes the protagonist lose his patience and give her a karate chop. Then he tries to hypnotize her, saying that it was impossible, although in the end he succeeds and doesn't know how to return her to normal. Well, people, anime things. The holidays arrive, Ami and her father go to some hot springs, so they give the protagonist the week off to travel or do something fun. But since men is lonelier than 1 o'clock, he stays home playing for more than 72 hours. But when the main character was starting to get bored, Yuzaki miraculously appears. There the waifu shows him a game, very similar to Pokemon Go, so they both have to go around the streets, collecting creatures, and their destiny is to collect various creatures during the Golden Week, which is the week off as they call it in Japan. Well, on the way they decide to buy some glasses, since the protagonist's eyesight hurts from being on the beach so much. When they enter a store they meet Ami, who helps them find the special glasses, but since the protagonist has tremendous style with glasses, the girls use him as a model. But as is expected, Yuzaki begins to make fun of him, giving him nicknames, and even making him look like a mad scientist or gangster. After spending a long time in the store and seeing that Yuzaki is also encouraged to try on some glasses, we see that they end up in an argument as usual. In short, when they were going back home, we see that the subway, in which they were very calm, begins to fill up more and more, because it turns out that a few meters away there is a soccer match, for which many fans would be taking that transport. There, being so close together, the protagonist ends up feeling the softness of the waifu, which makes the man blush, and he must start thinking about other things to avoid waking up the mosque tool in his pants. There he tries to do it, but in the end the protagonist can't stand it, and ends up turning off his system. The men fell asleep standing to avoid any discomfort, but this made him continue on the subway, leaving Yuzaki alone in the station. There later the man woke up in the middle of nowhere. Seeing that Yuzaki had called him, he didn't understand what the hell had happened. Finally, he explains this situation to his boss and Ami, who practically laugh in his face, because the truth was that the situation was quite bizarre. Finally, their Ami tells him that he should invite Yuzaki somewhere, now that she did everything possible for the men to have a good day, and in the end, because of the things that happened, she ended up being left alone in the place. Well, another day passes there and the protagonist meets the waifu at the university. There he sees her quite discouraged, because the day was rainy and that's why they couldn't go out to do anything entertaining. So, the man, seeing her so low in spirits, invites her out next week, which the waifu loves but leaves her shocked, thinking that it would be the end of the world, since the protagonist always wants to be alone and it is very rare that now is very sociable. In that the waifu comes up with some ideas like going by train to a place, but since the man remembers what happened, he got a little nervous, but well, then the man tells her that since he had left her alone the other day, spoke with the others and they gave him the advice to talk to her. And well, in a change of scene we see that the waifu made plans for the day of their date, but they did not count on a heavy rain, and it turns out that she ends up arriving all wet at the protagonist's house, since her plan was to spend the day playing and prepare a dinner. Thereafter the waifu showers, we see her wearing the protagonist clothes. The waifu prepares a good meal. Oh well, they really cook together, but hey, that's how they spend the night playing video games. There, when the protagonist accompanies the waifu to her house, he tells her that he had a great time and that he would like to repeat the appointment. This makes the waifu blush, and before leaving, this time it is Yuzaki who tells him to repeat the date, where both agrees to meet the next day to play video games. The days go by, and we find out that Yuzaki has been spending the days at the main character's house. By this I mean every day, the girl goes to visit him to play, something that already has the main character a little upset and worried, because rumors could arise in the university that both are dating. We see that he was asleep in the middle of class, where he suddenly wakes up, having a dream where he was trying to save a cat, but the very son of fruit, throw it into a vacuum. You know, the dream that we all have of feeling like we're falling, and when we hit the sack, we wake up. Yuzaki in a very Nagatoro way begins to make fun of him in the middle of class, since well the main character tells her that he was dreaming, and it just so happened that at that moment they were giving a conference on those dreams at the university, and supposedly if you had those dreams it was because you had a concern or that something bad could happen to you. But hey, after finishing classes, the protagonist tells the waifu that he doesn't believe in that nonsense they were talking about, in addition to saying that nothing was confirmed by science. And well, just about that Yuzaki almost falls down the stairs, but the protagonist manages to catch her at the last moment, saying that what was real was a syndrome where once you fall down the stairs, then you are afraid of falling again and you develop a kind of phobia. But well people, a lot of text, right? Now in a scene change we meet the protagonist's classmate, Sakurai, a blonde guy who is very attracted to girls, but the man practically runs away from all of them because they already have enough of him. While their Sakurai meets with the main character, where while they have drinks, they talk about what they did on vacation. The main character practically tells him that he was playing, working, and sleeping at home, where the blonde tells him that he will die being a virgin if he continues like this, and that he has to find a girlfriend as soon as possible. At that moment Yuzaki appears, who is shocked that Sakurai has a friend, because she thought from the beginning that this guy belonged to the imagination of the protagonist and that he was really a forever alone. And well, Sakurai realizes that there is a vibe between them, so on another occasion while they talk, he asks them if they have already done dirty things. The waifu gets a little angry and tells him that the protagonist may have profaner eyes, but he would never do such a thing. Although according to her something happened between them that the boy does not remember. The man asks her to tell him, but the waifu prefers to keep it secret. And while they're the main character, to prevent the man from continuing to screw around, decides to go buy some ice cream. In that Ami appears to talk to the blonde, asking him what the hell he was doing, and why he bothered our main character and Yuzaki. There the man said that he wants the best for them and wants them to become a couple, where the blonde proposes that they should do everything possible so that Yuzaki and the main character are boyfriends. The blonde, more than anything else, wants his friend to stop being a virgin, but Ami wants to see how far the two of them will go, but only as an observer. She doesn't want to intervene in the relationship, so she tells him not to screw them anymore. And well, while these two assholes are arguing, the main character and Yuzaki are in the schoolyard. There while Yuzaki is eating choco mint, the main character tells him that it looks like toothpaste, something that makes the waifu very angry, and makes her say such an epic monologue. But when I say so epic, I am serious. That is, it lasts about 5 minutes giving reasons, arguments, and everything to defend the power and delight of the chocoman. And all this ends up drawing the attention of the people of around, making them finally applaud. And well, Sak, seeing that everyone is a bit stupid, reveals to the girl that since he was a child he couldn't eat mint, because he couldn't stand the feeling it gave him. So he has never tried mint chocolate. Then the waifu gives him a taste of one of the sweets. The main character begs, but in the end he accepts, realizing that he would be giving an indirect kiss to the waifu. But he ends up doing it anyway, and the same thing happens to the waifu, who is all blushing. In a change of scene, we find ourselves on the beach, where we see our protagonist and the waifu in a bathing suit. But you may wonder how we got here. Well, as the old man from the cafe says, I'll put you in context of how the hell we got here. It turns out that it's summer vacation again, because in this series the year flies, and it turns out that the owner of the cafe recruits Yuzaki to work in his free time. This as we see was idea of the waifu, who personally asked the old man to give her the job, and he accepted because he thought it would be fun. The main character should teach her everything, so they proceed with the things that should be done with customer service. But already in the middle of teaching, the waifu makes fun of the man, because she really already knew what to do, because the old man and Ami had taught her. So, they just wanted to see how he the main character acted as a teacher, something that annoys him. This old man is a son of fruit. Well, after serving the customers, while they wait for more people, Yuzaki asks our main character what he would do in the summer. To which the man tells that he would spend time playing video games like a total nerd. And worst thing is that he says it with pride. Well, Yuzaki likes this, so she comes up with the idea of going to the beach together, a proposal that convinces the protagonist, since he hasn't swum since he left high school. And besides, the good kid didn't have many plans. So Sakurai arrives precisely in the conversation, where the men decide to go with them, to take care of all the preparations, transportation and lodging, since the blonde has a ticket. He also invites Ami, because if those two lovebirds go alone to the beach, who knows what could happen, and the two of them won't be able to see. Returning to the present, we see that the protagonist is enjoying the ocean, and that Ami is still traumatized by the enormous or rather tremendous weapons that Yuzaki carries. And you know what I mean? Well, the main character comes out of the water after having swum, and we see him in professional swimming mode. Ami tells him to stop bullshitting and to enjoy the beach, in addition to not leaving the waifu alone. So she tells him that first, praise Yuzaki a bit, saying something about her swimsuit, which to our surprise the man does, and while the waifu, even though she pushes him, she still remains happy. And well, after this they think about playing piñata with a watermelon. Yuzaki begins to give directions to the protagonist, as if they were attack commands, where in the end she put herself in front of him. They end up stumbling, and like things of destiny, and that God has this man as a favorite. Well, his hand ends up in Yuzaki's escapades, where she once again does not bother, and when he finishes playing, the waifu changes to the watermelon, pretending that nothing had happened. Night falls, and everyone goes to the summer house. What a tremendous house, people. I would like to have one like this. Anyway, the waifu plans to play some games that she brought, but Sakurai tells them that they better go to the forest, where once there he tells them that it is time for the test of courage, since the man plans to unite Yuzaki and Sak, because the kid wants Yuzaki to be scared so that the main character protects her. But something unexpected comes out, and it is that Sak is a mess, who is afraid of horror things, which he says out loud, where Yuzaki takes his cell phone from him to flee through the forest, where the protagonist begins to chase her. Being traumatized on the spot, there Yuzaki realizes that she went too far, and begins to comfort him, where in the end they decide to go home, to play. Well, they all fall asleep, except for Yuzaki, who thinks about doing bad things to the main character, but when she tries to take pictures of him, he ends up hugging her, comfortably, on the pair of pillows that the waifu carried. Yuzaki, after thinking about everything he did to her during the day, that would be a good reward for the guy, so she lets him sleep all night with her. The next day, he wakes up feeling great, because he feels that he slept in the most comfortable way possible. After several days, Yuzaki receives a call from the main character, where he invites her out, since he needs her by his side. This leaves the girl shocked, since she did not expect the men to be so direct. Once they meet, the waifu realizes that the kid just wanted to see her, to accompany him to a cat cafe. Yuzaki gets a little upset, because she thought it was time for the kid to declare himself. However, the waifu agrees to accompany him. Sak, like every alpha male, falls in love with the beauty of cats, and he can finally caress one, but, as Yuzaki is always fooling around, in the end they both have to leave the cafe, and they may not be accepted again. The girl tells him that as a way of gratitude, the protagonist should surprise her on her birthday, so expect something very epic on his part. Sak worried, since he doesn't know what the hell to give her because he thinks that whatever he gives her, the girl will make fun of him in his face. The old man and Ami tell him that he should give her whatever he thinks is right, since whatever he gives to Yuzaki, well, she would like it. The protagonist begins to think and think and think, but when it's time to buy something, the girl calls him, telling him that she needs him, the same thing he told her when they went to the cat cafe. But this time, what she wanted was to go to a bar. It turns out that she's turned 20, and what she wants to do is take adult stuff. The kid tells her that she shouldn't take that lightly, but Yuzaki doesn't care and begins to take everything without fear. In addition to ordering a lot of food and drinks, leaving Sak poor, the waifu is all dizzy. You know, she is very happy. The prota, seeing the time, begins to think that a cab will be very expensive, and that it would be dangerous to send her home alone. Plus the trains have already stopped working, being his only option to take her home. The waifu stays in the main character's apartment, where she starts to play. Their Sak pretends to be asleep so that she stops bothering him, but the girl tries to kiss him, where the man blushes and the waifu ends up telling him that it was joke. The next morning, she wakes up with a huge hangover, which puts her out of circulation, where Yuzaki says that from now on she will never drink again in her life, although that is a big lie that many say. But well, in the end the girl thanks him for having gone out with her, and being able to drink for the first time, where the protagonist tells her that it was a pleasure, and of course he gives her a good happy birthday, although, the girl ends up vomiting the bed. The next morning, Yuzaki delivers an envelope of money to the protagonist, this for the expenses that were made on her birthday, and for having damaged the bed that the man had, you know, because of the vomit that the girl threw. The fact is that the things they say create misunderstandings on the street, which is why many women think that the protagonist is a pig, that he only takes advantage of the girls. The man, upon returning to his work, where he explains to the old man and Ami what happened at Yuzaki's birthday party, how they both got drunk, and well, the waifu ended up wasted. The protagonist also tells them that Yuzaki now is depressed, and that talking to her is difficult, since she does not have the same energy. Of course, seeing her in that state has made him feel sorry for her, and she feels ashamed. Then the old man gives him a pass for the fireworks, the typical tradition, where Ami tells him that he should raise her spirits, with all kinds of compliments. To make her feel beautiful, the protagonist accepts and decides to invite Yuzaki. They both go out at night. Then the protagonist notices that the waifu is still a bit reserved, so he decides to take her to the food stalls since she loves to eat. After enjoying for a long time, the man begins to praise her, things that he brings back, the bullying Yuzaki and very kawaii. But, as the kid goes too far in his praise, the girl ends up hitting him with her bag, which sends him back to the past. There we see how the man, when he was in high school, he met Yuzaki. She was in the swimming club, and she wanted to learn to swim like the others, but his movements were very abrupt, so Sak decided to teach her, so both every day trained after school. When they both left school, while they were walking, they ran into said festival. There the main character, seeing that Yuzaki was sad, gave her something to eat, and told her that little by little she was improving, and that he knows she can do it. This is exciting to the girl, and just at that moment the show begins, where for the first time, the two were able to see the fireworks. The main character wakes up, running with a couple of mountains on his face. Yuzaki tells him that he should rest on her lap, because he was passed out for a long time. Then the main character tells her to stop being sad, and he thanks her for being by his side all this time. Yes, and despite her bothering him and doing bad things to him, thanks to her he has been able to go out more, he has visited new places, and he has had more fun playing video games. That sentimentally excites Yuzaki, who feels special, so she promises to go with him everywhere. After the festival, the protagonist tells Yuzaki to visit his house, this because the men have a lot of money that she herself gave him, and since she does not want it back, the man wants to give it to her mother. Upon arriving at the house, we meet Yuzaki's mother, who is just like Yuzaki but literally bigger. The lady is intimidated by the enormous presence of the protagonist, thinking that he is a scoundrel, but when she notices the kindness that he possesses, she calms down a bit. Sak enters the house and has a conversation with the mother, where he tells her that Yuzaki stayed at his home after drinking on his birthday. The mother gets upset with Yuzaki, but while the lady understands that it was something inevitable, by the way, the lady is so scared of the main character that she speaks to him from the other end of the room. Well, things get weird there, and the thing is that the main character stares at the cat, which is on the waifu's lap. But the woman thinks he's looking at her breasts, and since this series is about misunderstandings, Yuzaki asks him if he wants to touch that great softness. Well, anyone would like to touch them, but it's not the case. The protagonist says that it's not the time yet, because he's very alert, so he says goodbye to his mother and leaves. While working in the cafe, the mother of our waifu is going to visit the place, where she asks Ami and the old man if the main character likes older, those who are called ladies. There everyone notices that the woman is blushing, with an attitude of loving the protagonist, but at the same time not. The fact is that there the old man clarifies everything for her, and tells her that the protagonist is an asshole, that until now he is making friends with someone. Once the woman understands everything, goes to say goodbye to Yuzaki, but since Sak and Yuzaki are in the warehouse, she hears Sak say that he likes mature ones, where the woman thinks they are talking about her, but they really talked about the seeds of coffee. Well, Yuzaki visits the protagonist at his house, where they play video games. There the waifu annoys him as always. The kid gets to the point of telling her that she should be more like her mother, kind, and with manners. This annoys the waifu, which changes her attitude, which is very rare to see in her, where Sak after suffering so much kindness, asks her to return to normality, where the waifu and he begin to argue. In that a client arrives, and this boy scolds them both for fighting, but in turn gives him a lottery ticket, where the two decide to go see if they were lucky, and when the draw comes out, both won a 2-day trip for 2 people, with all paid. Said trip is made to Tottori Island. In that place by chance they meet Ami and the blonde, who went to be in the front row in the shows that this couple of lovebirds perform. The fact is that they reach a great beach, where both have a competition. The winner must give the other an ice cream, but, as expected, Yuzaki cheats, although it doesn't work much for her, since the main character ends up winning. The next stop is in a museum, a place where they keep collection figures of manga, and things made by major publishers. There in the souvenir store Yuzaki begins to buy many figures, which seem to be very expensive. Then they stop to eat something traditional, where once again they give each other an indirect kiss. They're the protagonist suspects that something is wrong on that island. Later, when they arrive at a temple, they decide to say the traditional prayer, and ask for some wishes, in addition to read her luck, where it appears to Yuzaki that she found love, with a lonely boy, a lover of video games and very tall. At that moment her friends tell her that Tottori is a place for lovers, and that it is an island where only couples go alone to do their little things. Each attraction they ride is something related to their partner. Even the statues they touch can bring luck for a lasting relationship. Yuzaki and Sak decide to just have fun, but on more than one occasion they lead to very compromising moments. Like the steam bath, for example, where the waifu slips and ends up falling on top of the protagonist, and as is to be expected the girl begins to make strange sounds, where the manager thinks they are doing dirty little things. Then they have a bath in the hot springs, where an argument between them leads them to compete again, but their competition is literally very healthy, and they simply seem like an adorable couple who are very competitive, and which in turn is the only way they the one that the two fit. After several days, Yuzaki visits the main character at his house as usual, but the man demands that she stop bringing junk to his home, since the girl has been leaving unnecessary things every time. There he forces her to throw everything away what she doesn't use, where she quickly agrees to get rid of everything, and it's that from the beginning her intention was to leave it at the main character's house, as if it were a garbage dump. Then the waifu prepares a delicious meal for him, and the next day at work the protagonist wants to help in the kitchen. Yuzaki laughs, since she knows that the men can't even make a sandwich, but Sak decides to show her his potential in the kitchen, but he ends up creating an aberration. Yuzaki, after mocking his face until she can't, tells him that she will help him, so she takes him home, so that his mother can teach him, where we have a scene with strange sounds on the part of the girls, which good leaves us a lot to think. However, they were only preparing a dough for the homemade noodles that they were going to make. Then the mother realizes that the protagonist is super nice, and that she was just traumatized, but in the end she has another misunderstanding again, and thinks that the main character wants to touch her apace, and that her daughter is plotting against her, to capture her. But well, they all end up eating the homemade udon they prepared. Then Yuzaki and the protagonist go to an extreme sports park to practice climbing. There the waifu tries to do her best, but she is very weak, which bothers her, since it's the first time she can't beat the main character at anything. Sak climbs the walls as if he were Spider-Man, and in fact he can stay alone with his arms on the wall. Yuzaki at the end, he just watches as he enjoys the climb. Night falls and the main character goes to a karaoke alone to sing the opening of the series, but Ami and Yuzaki appear to damage his environment. The girls make fun of the main character for going alone to a karaoke, because people who go alone to that place are considered useless without friends, something quite sad. There the girls begin to use very succulent cosplays, so that the protagonist forgives them, or while the men, after seeing a lot of succulents, feeling the apace of the waifus, and praying that the tool mouse does not come afloat, they end up singing what they want. But out of nowhere, in a sudden scene change, we see that the main character is at home, and that a heavy rain hits the place. There Yuzaki appears as usual, however she is all wet and crying, to tell to the prota that from now on, neither of the two will be able to see again. What happened is that her mother realized that she has not finished her homework yet, and that classes will return soon, so she needs help from the protagonist to make the final reports. But as expected, the protagonist closes the door in her face and sends her to study. Then while they are working, the old man's back practically breaks from walking with a lot of force. There they close the place and the protagonist takes him to therapy, where well, this big woman gives him some good massages with her attributes. Meanwhile, Ami talks to Yuzaki about the protagonist's past, which makes her blush a lot. Later, when she opens again, the blonde goes to have some chill drinks, and Yuzaki asks if they have ever seen the protagonist drunk. The blonde says yes, but it's hard to take him to that point, since he always watches his limit. But he knows how to make it go over the limit. First you have to meet him at his house, to be able to drink there, that way he won't be so worried about if the drinks go too far. Then feed him things with light spices and sauces, which allow him to be drinking all the time. To that is added to take movies that he likes, that make him forget how many drinks he has already had, and if she does everything well, she will have him in a state that the men says everything without fear of success. The waifu meets the objectives, and wants to see the protagonist in his most embarrassing side, since he looked at her in a state that he should never have seen. But while she talks with Sak, the man tells her that he likes her food, but that pause he made in the word made Yuzaki think he was referring to her, so the waifu starts drinking like crazy, being knocked out. The blonde arrives, and sees that they are both wasted, so he tells them both to go to sleep, both of them ending up on the same futon. The next day, they don't remember what the hell happened, only that they woke up together. This excites the old man and Aim, because they think they had finally some sexy time, but the protagonist says that nothing happened, although well, Yuzaki laughs in a way that let him think, which leaves Ami intrigued and wanting to know more. The holidays are over, and Yuzaki must return to school again. There she meets the protagonist, where she tells him that she wanted more vacations, so they could both go out together. But that's where Sak gives her a huge crush, telling her that it is not necessary that there are vacations for both of them to be able to go out, since they will be together all this time. That leaves the waifu blushing, who takes advantage of the moment to tease him, where well Sak will have to prepare himself, since he has to endure the annoyances and jokes that Yuzaki will be making all school year. And hey, before you go, if you like this video and want more of this type, leave the word plot in the comments referring to the good plots that Yuzaki have, if you know what I mean.